Yes, at
Wow. So
least.
yeah, so amazing.
Mm.
So today we've got a new channeler with us today. I'm going to let her introduce herself shortly. But just in case this is the first time you're tuning into our YouTube live, I'm Teresa, the founder of Solistic Clinic, and together we are channelers having a chat. And today's topic is about soul contracts and karma. Over to you, Crystal.
Hello, everybody. So nice to be able to join today. I'm really excited about today's topic because I think many people, including myself, have always been very curious about this question. Yeah, so over to you, Teresa.
Crystal, maybe a short nugget about who you are. How long have you been channeling? Or how long have you been
Okay.
working on with me on cases?
Okay, I have been channeling for a number of years now. Actually, I can't even keep track. I can't even keep count of time. You know, time is just a very earthly thing, right? We always say in the channeling that we do. Yeah, so there are many cases that I've been working with Teresa over the years, very, very interesting ones as well. So yeah, I'm just really excited that, like I said, we can talk about this topic today because there will be very interesting things that will come up, I'm sure.
Yes, very excited that you can join us today. And as usual, we have our favorite channel from Europe, Annie.
Hello, Europe speaking. We have different time zones. So I'm Annie, and I've been channeling for a couple of years now. I can say years. And the both other faces, I don't know where you see them because I don't know how the pacing will be. But the both other faces were my teachers, and I would say they are absolutely. We say out in German, Meisterin, and they really they are wonderful channelers, but also they really opened me up, and I was able also I did a healing work with them, and since then I really fell in love with that type of energy, and that's why. I knew I always wanted to channel, but I didn't know how to do it or when to start and find the person to do that. And when I found both of them, then I was right home. So right now, and it's always a joy to work. And also, I'm so grateful to we're able to work with you, collaborate mostly, and yeah, do the
And all
work we
this
do.
soul adventures we go on, right? Like
Yes.
so many things we learn and so many
Mm,
interesting beings we meet. And
Oh, yeah.
today we are about soul contracts and karma. Because this thing very often come up, right? When we were working
mm,
with clients, they often come up to talk about like, maybe this is karma. That I hear quite often. And also like even conversationally, right? And we tend to throw these terms around quite loosely, what karma is, right? But sometimes people don't realize that there is such thing as soul contracts. And as I was preparing and researching about this topic, then the idea of soul purpose came up as well. So, which is why I didn't include it in my thumbnail at the YouTube, where I just put in soul contract and karma. But today we're also going to talk a little bit about soul purpose. So, if we were not channelers, right, and if we were just be people, talking about spiritual stuff, what would you generally term what your understanding of soul contracts?
Purposes.
I think for me, it would be a contract, just like a contract on Earth, right? That
Mm,
you have between, two or more
mm,
parties. Yeah, like your written contract between two or more parties, and I have to fulfill all the terms and conditions inside, or else, something is gonna happen, right? There's always a
mm.
clause at the end of a contract. Yeah, so I
Based
probably
on what
think of
how,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. Any
Well,
any
before.
interpretation? Yeah.
Hmm. I don't know. I would definitely soul contract on like the purpose why I'm here, like where the most of that's I'm thinking before being a channeler. Yeah, I would have said like, okay, the mission I'm here mostly. But not necessarily eventually with so many different terms like Crystal was describing just like a few seconds ago. But maybe it was like very basics. But yeah, the rest, if something would turn back, then I would definitely thinking about karma. But I never really gave really a lot about like I said, importance as before as now. But so it was not a terminology that I used to use very often before being a channeler.
Which is really good, because when we were doing our research, right, and Sydney was the one working with me on doing the research, and we were channeling from the beings about what exactly is, all the terminology definition from their spiritual perspective. And what is interesting for them is that they say that these terms are really labels from human, but they understand what we intentionally wanted from them to share in this live YouTube live, right? So for them, they actually do have one thing in common throughout. Either it's a soul contract or a soul purpose or karma. Mind you, I will emphasize this is a terminology that humans use on Earth in our human structure or Earth structure. So they only have one thing in common. It is an expansion of our human experience and our soul experience. And that's the only thing common, right? But of course, there's slight differences between a soul purpose, a soul contract, and a karma or karmic experience. Yeah. So maybe I would just generally flash some slides to help support and guide the audiences to follow. And please, these things, as mentioned earlier, they are loosely used terms to help us with the concept. So it's not embedded in stone that this is the only way to describe soul contracts or soul purposes or karma. So over here, just very loosely, soul contract can be with an individual or with a group of parties, right? And it is usually made before incarnation. So before incarnation, the souls come together to make an agreement with each other, right? That they are going to have this experience, or this experience is very large, right? For some people, is experiences of ups and downs, or material experiences or relationship experiences. So it all comes. But here's another thing that's interesting. There is possibly contract with that country for that experience, right? And I'll share a bit more later. And so these are all agreements before we were born. And it is, of course, to support our spiritual growth. And because there are free will, sometimes we may choose to not complete it because, one, it may be too difficult. Two, it may be that we don't feel equipped at the time to carry out the agreement. So one thing about the soul contracts, that what the guardians are telling us is that it is malleable, which means that it can change form. So I'm going to pause the sharing here to have a bit more conversation around the soul contract. So any questions coming to mind for Crystal and Annie?
Yeah, maybe I was also thinking like just like on Earth you have contracts like for a year or 2 years or 10 years, or even like insurance, right? You have the contract like only when you pass on, you're gonna, a sum of money is gonna be given inheritance to your kids and your family. So it could be really the whole lifetime of a contract. So I'm just thinking that when we say that, when you talk about free will, the last point, whereby a contract can, we decide not to complete the contract, But I'm also thinking it could be from the other perspective of that maybe we decide to break the contract into parts, right? That in this lifetime, I'm going to fulfill this part of the contract, and I'm going to continue on that contract that I have with you in another lifetime, but in a different role, perhaps, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I think that's definitely possible. Definitely. You raise a very good point, because for a lot of contracts, it is not just one lifetime. It can be an agreement between two parties over a few lifetimes, or with a country over a few lifetimes. So that's a really good point, that maybe just this life I want to carry out one part of the contract, and then there could be other parts of the contract. Yeah.
Mm.
So while we were doing the research, I also, I'm very curious, and I asked quite a few questions, right? Like, for example, let's just say I had an agreement of the contract with somebody. But as you know, the world we live in, not everything is as predictable. Because, for example, you may have been chosen to be born to certain parents who then decided to abort the baby. So the soul that you made a contract and agreement with is not born in this lifetime, example. Or the soul expired before the contract has been fulfilled, right? So what happens? Like, I made a contract with these parties, and then they are not here to help me carry out.
Yeah.
What could the possible outcome be? And that's where they share that because it's malleable, is actually good, because then somebody else can come in and step in to fulfill the contract for me, right? Because they may have the same frequency that they both want to experience this. So one of the things that the guardians shared that I thought was extremely interesting is that these contracts, when we make them at a spiritual level, is made at a frequency level.
There's energy, the energy involved there.
Right? The energy and the frequency level. So what does that mean? Let's just say, for example, I so desire to have a tough teacher to teach me how to be Zen. So if I choose to be Zen, I will need to be like born into a very noisy family, or have a very, very disturbing spouse or something, right? Now let's just say the person I agreed to did not get born. But because my frequency is such that I desire to be Zen, then I can only prove and show my Zenness when somebody noisy and somebody disturbing come along. That frequency is very easy to find. Somebody out there say that I want to be a tough teacher. I want to teach people to be Zen, right? And then it's very easy to fulfill. So that's one thing that I learned was quite interesting about that contract actually made in the form of frequency and resonance.
It's like attracting attracting the I don't know, the other souls that wants to have that kind of learning experience, but the other, the opposite of it, maybe. Then you kind of attract each other. That's what you're saying, like, two, like the magnets, two opposite magnets attracting each other to pull, right? To pull it together so that you will achieve, both of you get to achieve that that purpose or that contract experience.
Correct. Yeah.
That is interesting.
So I have an interesting question for both of you. From your own life experience, and I'm going to start with Annie. What life contract do you think you have made with some people before you were born? Crystal,
Exactly what you said just before.
Yeah.
Choosing a tough teacher, or many of them, many tough teachers' relationships, to learn to be able to become Zen and pass through. The other contract is that to realize that everything is malleable. That was like part of my contract now, and I like exactly. Now is that like the fun begins. So this is my experience so far. What I I understand. When you have like either my experience, maybe for the other one, but from my experience, either you continue the drama and you stick into the vicious circle, and then you realize, wait a minute, this is my own. I can decide that it doesn't have to be that way. So this is where wisdom, or call it being able to change the contract, the awareness of wanting or choosing to do something more, and then apply it. Yeah. So that would be my two experiences I changed. Like one being the victim, the other one is like taking responsibility for now on, and that's where the Zen is.
I think you pointed to something that's really key here, is that the contract is here to give you the experience so that you can learn your own choices.
And
So
speed.
that's exact. And what?
and your space or your pace, or like you want to like.
Yeah. So then it's up to you. So you have that free
Mm.
will to experience whatever event that has been carried out for you. So you pointed out a very good point, that your own choice, you can choose to be Zen or continue with the drama. And how soon do you want to arrive there? Thank you for pointing that out, Annie.
How soon you
Crystal,
want to complete that contract?
mm,
Yeah.
Annie, so for
Um,
Crystal, what is your contract you
oh,
feel you have met?
I definitely have a lot of contracts. I think the very obvious contract, which you all know, is my relationship with my spouse. So an interesting contract, because in that contract there were many clauses, I think, and definitely had to experience and make that free will choice. The first part, right, of my marriage, and so the choice is like, to stay or not to stay, and then I made a choice, right? So I believe that that had to happen between both of us. So we each have our own clauses, perhaps, that we wanted to learn in that contract. And then the choice after that, or part two of the contract, is whether you decide you want to like what Annie say, right? When you experience, you learn, you want to be Zen, right? Instead of going through the drama. So I had to learn, I had to heal and learn through that journey, and that's what lead to this as well, right? Yeah. So not realizing that with the choices that I made, the free will choices actually led me closer to fulfilling the contract, right, that I have with this soul. Yeah. So I see.
So one question to both of you, because as they say in the soul contract, it's to help with your spiritual growth. So what
mm,
spiritual growth do you think that from fulfilling your contract or experiencing your contract that you have learned, or what spiritual growth do you think that you have taken from that contract?
mm. I think for me, I used to have a very narrow perspective about
Mm,
religion and spirituality.
mm,
Yeah. So I was very, very religious before everything happened, right? And to me, it was, how could I fail this relationship? Because I was following all the rules correctly, all the religious rules, right? And all the
mm,
criteria. And we both were, right? In a very doctrine kind of environment, actually. So how could this go wrong?
mm,
But it did, right? Because human beings have free will choices. And then I started questioning about why, right? And
mm,
I think when we start questioning about why is this is happening, how could it be? If you follow all the ritualistic things, right, how can it go wrong, right? You expect
mm,
it to work, yeah, but it didn't. Yeah, so that is where I think expansion and growth happen. So when something you think is tragic, and
mm,
yes, a broken relationship is very tragic to many people, right? You're
mm,
hurt, you're broken, or you got a divorce, and so going through that deep pain, that's where you have a choice, right, to
mm,
either understand the why, and then to have your own mindset of, you know what, I want to grow out of this. I want to understand more. And that's where I did my own soul searching, right? Which
Beautiful.
led me
Yeah,
to this path, I would say, eventually.
yeah. I really like
Mm.
that. What you have grown from there is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Annie?
I do, without being, I might sound a little bit arrogant. No, it isn't. I do feel like I'm rewriting, not necessarily from A to Z, but I'm definitely I don't know what was my beginning at the beginning, but I'm pretty sure like there's been like so many scratches. No, wait, I think there's been a lot of change, and I'm pretty sure I ended up my contract is not what I maybe I thought I was gonna get or expected to be, and it's also really cool because I think it was probably above my expectations. That's what it feels like when I'm being totally transparent or with you. But I do feel like, and that's the fun part of it, is like, wow, I can, the malleable thing is like, it's not about the soul contract itself to make it 100% like it was written. I think is to complete or to move to the forward. And I think this is the beauty of it, is just like really, and the magic of it is that you are not just that contract. Is like and I think this is the experience of being on earth and many other, not just on earth, but many experiences. It's like this is where the expansion happens, but I will speak for me. I don't know for the other
Yeah,
ones,
because everybody's experience is different. And I will share mine, and mine, I think it's going to sound weird to a lot of people because I think the contract that I had probably was with a stray dog that I found on the street. Not me who found it, but somebody else who found it. It was so impactful for me because I was afraid of dogs, right? And then from there, I because basically what that contract was is to help me and showed me unconditional love. Because I think for a lot of us when we were growing up in this duality world that we're in, it's very conditional, very conditional. You have a good result, then you get rewards, right? You do good, you do charity, then we guarantee you something, right? There's always very conditional, and and so we have been taught that it is very conditional, and it's the first time truly that I understood what unconditional love was through this stray dog, which I kept for around 5 years. I call him stray dog, but to me, he is the love of my life, right? Because I was afraid of dogs, and when he was found, my parents was very clear that look, you're asthmatic, you cannot keep a dog with you. You should send it to the pet shelter, right? And knowing the condition that he's in, it is for sure that when he arrives at the pet shelter, he's going to be put down, right? He's got rotten teeth, his bones are not working, he's got so many conditions on him. And I love life too much to allow one life to be wasted this way. So I decided to overcome my fear for dogs because I wanted to keep him. And it was in that sense, I really experienced that it was unconditional love returned from him and for me to just love him. And that really expanded my understanding of what unconditional love is. So that contract was actually from him, that dog. So while it's sad that I didn't learn unconditional love from anything else, but I probably was too blind to learn it from anybody else, and that it needed to be done through an animal. But yeah, that for me was very deep. Until today, I still am very grateful for that experience. Yeah, because that really blew my mind. And of course, it then led me down to a very deep spiritual path. From there, the connection and really understanding what love is at the next level. and it really then changed my frequency to be able to serve at the next level. So yeah, so that was my soul contract.
Mm,
One of them, not all of them. One of them.
yeah, I'm sure we have many. And
Yeah.
yeah, I was also thinking that, we don't know what is I mean, I say contracts and terms and all that as if I know, right?
Mm,
Honestly, we're not going to know what is written in our contract. We don't
mm,
know. Okay, we knew it before we came, but I mean, when we're down here living our life right now, we have no idea, whether we take all the
yep.
criterias and the clauses and all, but like what Annie was also saying is that it's where you feel that you're moving forward in your life. That's important. The important point here I want to say as well is not about, hey, did I fulfill this whole contract? Did I complete all the tasks? Did I tick all the clauses and all the boxes? That's not the point, right? Yeah, I mean, it's easy for me now, or when we go through all our different experiences and then we look back and say, hey, yeah, that's what we learned, and that's what that's how I grew from that experience. That's because we
Mm,
are looking back. But I'm sure for all of us, when we are going through that experience at that time, we actually have no idea. We're just going through and just, following the wave and seeing how it takes us, right? And then we go through that whole emotional roller coaster as well, and that's growth, I feel. When you go through
mm.
that emotion of being hurt and then joy and peace and then, tears, everything, that's actually our human experience that we are so privileged to go to have, yeah,
Mm,
to experience, yeah, and that's
yeah,
that's the growth.
I really love
Mm,
what you just said. It actually really summarized why before we were born we chose to create some contract. So
mm,
then we come here, I guess, purpose driven to have a mission to learn something, experience something, because they have always said that Earth is a school. And it's a very privilege, it's a good privilege to be able to come here to have that emotional up and down and experience and excitement. That's why so many souls actually choose to be incarnated on Earth.
I'd like to bring up a little, from my experience also, is that I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people also, they know have, they feel like they have a contract, like no, they know they have a contract, but they just don't know. And
Yeah.
for many years, I felt the pressure and I needed to do something, but I didn't know what. And I was
Mm.
searching, I wasn't the why or what for a long time. And I just felt like I had to find it, but I didn't know, I couldn't put the finger on it. It took me many years. And but I just say that but already at a young age, I felt was very emotional, and I could feel a lot of stress and anxiety from the pressure, and it was like very physical. And I knew there was something. I tried to find it, but I couldn't get the answers.
And now
Oh, totally.
you found it?
For oh, many of them, and that's the beauty of it. It's like, oh, okay, now I get it. And I was like, well, one part, and like, thanks to you girls because you really helped me to center it, and I could focus. Oh, okay, so I got a lot of answers working with you in this whole holistic clinic, and yeah, so that was one of them. And then when you can heal whatever it is, if it's a relationship, if it's a physical issue, if it's any connection that you're having a hard time, in your life, like when you can already do some healing, I think that when you can go to the B section for the next section. And sometimes you're really stuck, you have a list, but you cannot go to the next chapter or the next lecture or whatever page until you have done the first one. And for my case, that was it.
Yeah. And I absolutely feel like, for example, I am not here today to do this work if that stray dog did not appear to teach me that unconditional love that really cracked open my heart, especially when he left and go to the heavens in only 5 years or 6 years, being in my life. He was the joy of my life, and just being able to experience that warmth from that dog that is so unconditional. And when he left, it was so painful. It really was a moment of surrendering. And it's so hard for us to surrender, to just accept that, okay, this is the next phase. And that cracking of the heart made me feel so vulnerable that I was able to experience deep emotions and empathy. And therefore, I can then learn to serve the way that I can serve now, to be a bit more compassionate, empathetic, and experience what the souls are going through, their pain. Whereas, like, I remembered when I was younger, the judgment of it, like, oh, what do you mean you break up and then you can get over it? What the hell? Like, just be tough and be strong and just move on, march on, right? Well, it's not that easy, when you go through a heartbreak, when you have betrayal and all that, right? It
Mm,
previously I would have been like, come on, we have a mission, we have a task, let's just toughen up, let's just continue on, and that would be the most uncompassionate and unempathetic way of treating humans' emotions and conditions and experiences. So I would say that having my heart cracked open when the dog died. Oh my God, that was so painful that I have only pure love for anybody else who's going through that pain. Yeah. So yeah, I think
mm,
all of you brought up really interesting um experiences that you both experienced about the contract and soul contract. There was a few things that I asked when we were doing the research about the soul contract. Um, it's like, how are they dissolved if they cannot be fulfilled, right? Let's just say, as I mentioned, the two parties who agreed to do it, and then one party is not there to fulfill it. Like, how can it be dissolved? Because sometimes, like a tough teacher, right, to bring a zenith, that could be a very simple task, but sometimes could be more complicated contract, right? And, will it be dissolved? According to the guide or the guardian, yes, it can be dissolved, but for the work that we do in holistic healing, sometimes it's good to go in to search for it and
mm,
dissolve it. I remembered when I was starting my spiritual journey, I had one shamanic journey where I went to the underworld through the shamanic journey to take a look at some of the soul contracts that was written. And interesting enough, I actually had many soul contracts that was written from my previous incarnation in other lives, right? And so when I saw those contracts, they were made from different materials, different parchment papers, and all that because of the different incarnation I had. But then I went in to dissolve them because some of them are no longer in service or no longer necessary, right? So that was a shamanic, I guess, journey where we go into the underworld to take a look at it. I'm not too sure if they are exactly the same as what the Guardians are talking about, because the terms of what defines a soul contract, a soul purpose, and all that is very human in our own definition, but they understand it from a frequency level. Yeah. So,
mm,
shall we move on to the next one, which is about the soul purpose? Soul purpose is actually a lot more simple, but the thing is that about soul purpose is that it really is who we are and what we are here to deliver as our contribution. So, for example, all of us here as a channeler, but the way we channel, we're using as a form of healing, right? So, in some sense, our soul purpose is also a healer. There are also people's sole purpose that are teacher, right? There are also others' sole purpose as creators, or sole purpose as nurturers. And so there are many. I mean, like, I think using these generic terms, is just making it more relatable to a lot of people that they can go, oh yeah, I'm a creator, I'm a builder, I'm a nurturer, I'm a teacher, right? So there are this type of clarity about the purpose. And I thought I want to bring this up because there are so many people who ask about what's my purpose. Do you get
Mm.
that question a lot?
Yeah.
Do you know what's your soul purpose?
I think we have the broader soul purpose and many smaller soul purposes,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah, so it's just like example, if you are I don't know, if you are the minister of the prime minister of a country, right? That's your sole purpose, to be the prime minister of the country. But be having the role as a prime minister, there's also other, roles that you need to do, right? You're the face of your country, yet you need to also support be a great leader for the people working under you. You want to serve the people. I mean, there's a lot of the kind of different purposes. And if you're married, then you're a husband, you're a spouse. If you have kids, then you'll become, a father is also a sole purpose. So like you said,
I
there's just
think,
many different hats. But
but I
I
think the
know,
purpose doesn't change though. Like the purpose
yeah,
is like the core of who you are, like a flower, for example.
supporting humanity, right? That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, like for example, a flower, the purpose of a flower is to beautify.
Mm,
Like you can put the flower in any country, in any situation. The purpose of the flower is to beautify. So
mm,
we may have our roles as a daughter, as a teacher, or as whatever. The purpose of it doesn't really change though. So for example, like if I'm a
mm.
teacher type of purpose, even if I'm at home, I will still find it a joy to teach
Teach.
anything,
Mm,
right? Like I'll find any moment, like I'll be learning something to teach because that to me is my purpose. So just think of it as like a form of like if you are born, your purpose is to be a flower, is to beautify. And you can be in a conference room, you can be a bouquet, you can be anywhere. Your purpose is to beautify,
yeah. So
right?
your so-called reasoning for being here, that's the
Mm,
question that we need to ask ourselves. Yeah.
So
Mm,
what's our purpose, right? So
mm,
we may have one or two form of purpose. Like in this case, for me, I do enjoy sharing and teaching about spirituality. So then that's one form of me as a teacher. But also I do love being able to heal and support, and being a guardian of the souls, right? So then my purpose would be a healer as well. So you can put me in any situation, right? And I will still naturally still be eager to share and teach and also be able to support healing, right? So then that is who I see myself as a purpose for the soul right now and brings joy to it. And that's one thing though
mm,
I do find that once we are very clear about our purpose, we stop seeking, we
mm,
stop wondering,
mm.
we stop asking questions, we stop asking for validation, right? Because you're really clear about who you are, and then it is a bit more unshakable, right? Like no, there's no more doubt, then
Mm,
you're unshakable, and you have so much
mm,
more peace within that you can go about your way. And let's just say, you know, I already know that I'm a healer, energetic healer, spiritual healer. And somebody come and said that I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe there's such thing as souls. I don't believe that. I was like, okay, you're entitled to that. I don't feel the need to go defend and say, I'm going to argue till the cows come home that yes, ghosts exist, right? There's no need for that because for me, my truth and my purpose is very clear. So that's what I found. Like once you have that clarity about purpose, it is very, life is so much simpler, I think. Would you all agree? Or do y'all have a different take on that?
No, yeah, I agree. I think when we understand why we are here, like you said, you don't have to start searching for your why, and you definitely feel more grounded, more complete.
Mm.
And it's like, okay, then I'm moving towards this one direction, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But I do think that there may be a mix of everything, right? Like for us here, all of us, I would say that you can classify, boldly say that we're all healers. But what's your other mix? Like I said, mine probably is a teacher. What's Annie's? What's the other make of your other purpose?
I was born with curiosity, so definitely this drives me and
Explorer?
pushes me. So yeah, more than explorer, yes, explorer would be to explore learner, but
Mm,
also the other is to being and give it a voice. So from my experience, I can share, and that's how I teach.
mm,
Like so, so being pragmatic, like is it? Because I often say, like, if I can spare you 20 years, please do that.
no, it's beautiful. I love that. Yeah, I can definitely feel that about you. You're definitely curious, and I've traveled with you in terms of like being in different countries and seeing how you really take a lot of interest in your environment. Yeah, and you do share that. I really agree. I think you're very clear on that. What about
Mm.
Crystal?
Uh, think for me, I feel that I've experienced a lot of different things in my life. And I do want to share those experiences, just like Annie, right? If I can cut short your learning experience, why do you want to go through the pain? Or why don't you hear me out and then you decide for yourself what you feel is best? But at least you hear from another perspective and you can learn from the experience that I had.
Mm,
So I would say I think we're all very similar as channelers and healers or light workers is that's what we feel that we want to do as well. We want to teach and share everything that
mm,
we have experienced. Uh,
mm.
yeah.
I do want to add one thing for you though. I think that you are a very good nurturer as well. Like
Oh, thank you.
I've seen how you brought up your children, and they are so grounded and they are so well behaved in the sense that they are sensitive, empathetic. I do think that that's credit to you being a very good nurturer as well.
A router.
Yeah.
Because you can see that, like in teaching, right? She's also there to be the comfort for a lot of students. Like when
Yes.
we're teaching, and then a lot of students may be fumbling and wondering how else to approach the next step. She's there to hold the student's hand and carry the students through to support them, guide them in such a loving and gentle way. So that nurturer side of you actually do come
Mhm.
out quite obvious in your form of teaching. Like
Thank
you're
you.
more than just sharing your information. You're more than just
Mm.
giving. You're actually there nurturing, there to watch their growth. And and when we were teaching, she often shares with me like, oh yeah, the student's doing so well and it brings us so much joy. So yeah, I really enjoyed teaching together with Crystal.
Thank
So
you.
the So I think the purpose side is actually pretty clear, or pretty straightforward. Is there anything that we feel that we need to discuss a bit deeper to help people understand? Because I think, this topic, like about karma, about soul contract and purpose, people do often question it, but there is no forum for them to articulate and ask that question. So if we can use this platform to share as much of it as possible, that would be really helpful to the audience. I don't know if you have any other questions that you feel that others may have.
Mm. Yeah, I think you summarize it really well. Like I think sometimes we can get confused with purpose and the roles that we play, like what you were explaining earlier, right? Yeah,
Mm,
so that's important probably to take note that don't be confused with what is your sole purpose here versus that, oh, but I have so many roles to play. It doesn't mean that I have 1,000 purposes. Yeah.
mm, yeah, exactly.
For that theme of today, we can maybe summarize. I'll be the pragmatic person now, like for
Yes.
practical. I noticed that even myself, like I was like confusing the terminology of soul purpose and the other one we were talking about. Hello, what's happening with my memory now? Brain fog.
Karma,
Um,
contract.
yeah, the
Contract?
contract, soul contract, and and soul quasi almost identity. So I think I was talking. I did give an experience, an example that I was talking about, like my previous, that I was searching for something, but it was not necessarily my identity. I think it was like I was talking about the soul contracts, but actually maybe I was more into my in the search of my soul.
Purpose.
Purpose. Thank you. You see, like there's like sometimes a fusion happening in between them. So maybe it's like there must be another person thinking like me, or like if you want to make sure you're discerning both of them, that what was you would be your tip. But I would have a tendency to think like one is mostly the connections you have with other people, and the other one is with oneself. Or am I being too pragmatic now?
No, I mean, like, knowing your purpose, then you can form the contracts to fulfill and for you to see how you are given an opportunity to shine in your purpose, right? So that is also contractual. So it actually is two things, one on top of each other. It's
Yeah.
just that the sole purpose is a bit more firm versus the contract. Because the contract are situations, scenarios, environmental play outs, things that are playing out as a contract. But a purpose is that I'm here to fulfill my role as a nurturer, as a creator, as a teacher, as a healer. So that's all that um, firmness of your role that doesn't change. Not role, your purpose that doesn't change. Okay, I think the more we muddle this, we get into it, we muddle it even further. Okay, let's move on to Hamar.
You.
Let me share it. Hamar. So this one is going to be a bit controversial because there's a lot of, I guess, definition from a religious perspective. But I want to say that we are approaching this from a spiritual perspective, right? So from a spiritual perspective, very simple. It's really, really simple. It simply is building on an experience so that we have expanded experiences for individual soul. This is often misinterpreted as a punishment or reward, and I will explain that a bit more later, I mean, very shortly. But I just want to emphasize that this is very different from the religion's definition. So the religious explanation of this karma is often very loaded as a form of punishment or reward, and it is cause and effect. It's also cause and effect, right? So interestingly, when we were having that research and conversations with guardians of the soul contract and guardians of the souls, it was very hard for them to even use the word karma because they understand it from our humans' perspective, vibrationally, frequency wise, but really, from their simple explanation to us, is an expansion of our soul's experience, building on top of each other. So let me stop share so I can explain. So one simple explanation, very simple. Let's just say I am Crystal's mother in previous life, right? And then Crystal experienced being my daughter. And she's like, okay, maybe things can be done differently. So next life, let's have an agreement with Teresa that I want to be taking the role as a mother, and she can take a role as my daughter. In many religions, they may say that's a punishment or that is payback time, right? Because I've been a nasty mom and Crystal want to come back for payback, right? And it's for me to pay back to her for being a nasty mom. I've been tiger mom, the Asian tiger mom, and forced her to do certain things she doesn't want to do. So then she decided that this life she's coming back as my mother and I'm her daughter. But really, from a spiritual perspective, she was just curious of the experience. You know, is there a different way of playing out to be a mother? Will I have done it differently since I've experienced it as a daughter? And I
Mm.
want to try being a mother. So that's a very simple explanation of how we want to expand our experience based on something that we have really experienced before. So it seems like a cycle. It seems like a cycle. It seems like a circle of
Mm.
relationships, right? But it really is deepening that relationship understanding. Does that make sense? Is there any other examples that you all can draw upon about karma?
No, like I totally agree. I think for uh Asian or more Eastern religious culture, everything is about, yeah, karma is like bad luck, right? Or, yeah, it's unfortunate for you. So this is your karma because you did something bad in your past life, and therefore you need to experience your learning in this life, right? Yeah. So
Mm,
I like how you mentioned about, because during the research that was being done, it's like we come to this realization that it's not that. It's not because you did something bad or something wrong and it's all your fault, and therefore you need to suffer in this lifetime because of that. Yeah. So
mm.
that misconception, yeah, it's good to clear this misconception as you mentioned. Mm,
From a spiritual level, right?
yeah, yeah.
Because there's another thing though. In the world of the spirit, right? Everything is just an experience. There really is no such thing as what is better or what's
Mm,
not.
mm,
That's a very human concept, right? Like we
yeah.
see somebody with so much money, then we say, wow, they've done well. But for some people who's living through that, it could be a curse, right? I've
Mm,
done a lot of healing for past lives, right? And trust me, the amount of princess that was suffering, right? They have
yeah.
all the money, they have all the power and
How, yeah.
influence, but they led a very sad life. And so much so that in this life, they are so averted towards power, money, because the impression was that power and money led to loneliness,
Mm,
right? But of course, in our human mind, we're like, okay, you've got so much money and so much power, beauty, then you must have done something right from the previous life. But seriously, from a spirit perspective, there's no judgment to all the experiences. There's no good and bad to the experiences at all. Yeah. So I thought that was something very interesting, that humanly is very hard to grasp and hard to accept because we like the closure of cause
yeah.
and effect, and that
Mm,
there's justice. Humans like justice. Like if somebody done something wrong, there should be justice behind it. So humans like that concept of having justice. The idea of karma, cause and effect, punishment, reward, and justice is all tied to the concept of karma, but from a spirit world, it doesn't exist.
yeah. I think it's really hard for people to accept the fact that, you mean there's nothing bad, or there's nothing good. It's just an experience, because we like to label, like, you are good. Maybe it's just upbringing as well, right? Like when things are happening the way you want, then means you have a good life. If it's not, means you have a bad life. Or
Yeah.
if you are not successful enough, so called, in your career to the standards of your parents, then hey, you're not, your karma must be, you didn't do enough to have, a
Or that you're here to
better.
punish your parents.
Yeah,
You're
correct.
here
You're,
to,
you're a bad
you're a
child. Why
bad
aren't you
child.
earning more? Why can't you be like your neighbors, our neighbor's son? Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
Eddie, I know that when we're talking about karma, it's a very Eastern concept. Do you have similar concept growing up in
yeah,
your Western
in Europe.
culture? No such thing
Well,
as cause and effect, reward, punishment, justice.
we
Bad
call
luck.
it more, yeah, bad luck, or like no luck in your relationship. There must be like I must have been like a really bad person, like I don't know. Or with it's my karma. Like it's I think it's being used to explain why you have why you don't have this, or why it's happening. So it's just like it's pretty much being used like ketchup, I would say, for almost for everything. But it doesn't make it, at the end, karma is probably like, if you notice something, then it is your responsibility to make something about it, and not just accept that it will go on and you can't do anything about it. That's pretty much where people like like I'm stepping out and like this is happening to me, I can't do anything about this.
So there is no
Mm.
concept of like what you did wrong in the past life, and therefore this life you don't get what you want.
Remember, Catholics that don't well, I'm
You're
Catholic,
the
but
Catholic,
nobody
yeah.
asked me,
Yeah.
but they don't think in afterlife. They do think
Mm.
Good
they
point.
believe in
And
afterlives, but not
not
in.
past lives.
No,
Yeah.
it's
They
not
believe in
something
heaven
Yeah.
and
concept.
earth. Oh, sorry,
So
heaven and
karma
Mm.
is
hell.
more like the bad luck thing, and
Mm.
more.
Ah,
Yeah,
But
it's
okay.
not
it
this
is.
lifetime, right? Yeah. Like what
Yeah,
you
but
do in this lifetime.
there's the new age thanks to the 70s and the boomers, and so they're mostly not, they are open. It's like it's a concept that it's a little bit more integrated, but it's not from the religion or the family you were born with,
Mm.
mostly that.
So in
Mm.
our research, what was interesting is that, like, let's just say one of the reasons why I wanted to explore this topic, right, was because I came across a soul that decided to be born without limbs, no hands, no feet, right? And and I was like, wow, in a lot of the explanation from the parents or from the religious group, they would have said that this is karma, right? Like,
Mm.
previous life, that girl or boy that was born without hands and feet is probably here to claim back from debt from the parents, right? So we
Mm.
have that concept like, we're here to claim back the debts from the parents, right? Or that they must have done something wrong and therefore she's punished without hands and feet, right? But here's the interesting thing, when we were channeling that soul, what do you think that the soul wanted to experience when it chose to be born without hands and feet? Sorry to be putting you girls on the spot, but it's just interesting to hear like everybody's concept of like if a soul have chosen to be born without hands and feet, what is the soul experience that the soul is looking for?
Um,
Mm.
First of all, an experience, I would say that's easy to answer, but
Which one's that?
most
You was
living the experience, like it is already, and being, you depend somehow on so there is this dependency, you can be with other people, so you have to be, yeah, codepending on
So okay,
a, yeah.
that's
Mm.
possible, yeah. Crystal, that's possibility. If a soul chose to be born without hands and feet, what experience are they looking for?
Um, I for me, it could be because they wanted to be able to know, even without hands and feet, independence. Like, are they able to overcome this adversity and be able to be independent? And
Mm-hmm.
then also, for the parents, right, that brought this soul into this world, then it would be unconditional love, like, right? Because you're going to be looking at a child that has no hands, no limbs, but then again, it is your child, right? So, being a parent myself, I just cannot imagine if my child, I mean, I have very healthy children, but even if they were not, right? Would I love them less, right? It's because so as a parent, it's somehow you have that kind of like, no, I will love them no matter what. Like for every parent, if you ask them, they will tell you my children is the most beautiful, is the smartest, is the best, right? You're
Yeah.
so proud of your children. Yeah, so I think it's for both of the soul parties in this contract, I think, to learn that
Yeah.
kind of unconditional love as
So
well. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
really hitting the nail, both of you. So that soul actually from the dimension of looking down on earth, and then it saw how much love get poured to somebody who is weak and somebody who is not capable, right? It witnessed that and said, I want to experience that. I want to experience that unconditional love. I want to experience what it means that I don't have to work for love. I don't have to prove anything to get that love. So from, let's call it heaven, I look down on earth and go, wow, I want to experience that. So that soul made that choice that I want to experience that for this short period of time. I'm going to be born without hands and feet to just be
Mm.
carried. I can't do a day's work. I have no purpose to just be
Mm.
somebody to give you the opportunity to offer unconditional love. So yeah, so I thought
Uh,
that was a very interesting perspective from that soul when it made that choice.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I mean, from example for people like us or outsiders looking at this story, for example, this person, is also for us to learn, right, about empathy, right? About and to see when you see like monkey see, monkey do, right? So if
Mm.
you can see a parent giving unconditional love or even a friend giving unconditional love to this person, then it kind of broadens your own perspective about, wow, is this unconditional love? Am I capable of that? Can I do that? Maybe, the energy I think will affect the people around them as well.
mhm.
Mm.
And that's
I,
an opportunity for, right, growth and expansion.
I really love what you just said because it reminded me today, like Crystal, you and I today we went to the donate coffin temple
Coffin, yeah,
because
yeah.
we're in Bangkok right now. And as we were looking for the temple, a handicapped man in the wheelchair rolled past me. And it was obviously he hasn't bathed for a few days. I could smell because I'm very sensitive to smell. We talked about that during the psychic gift. Um, and and I believe in my previous uh lack of deeper empathy, I would have like shunned and run away, because the smell was strong and and he looked odd, right? Because he doesn't have his limbs with him and all that, right? But this time when he was rolling past me in his wheelchair, I could smell him very strong, and my mind immediately was like, well, I wonder who had a chance to really just give him a hug because he smells so bad, right? And my heart goes out to him and I said, will somebody be there to just show him that human connection, to touch him
Mhm.
and hug him? Because in this world that we are in, it's so quick for us to judge. There's somebody who looks different to us, and
Yeah.
then let alone giving them a hug, let alone not running away from them because they look so different for us to us. So for a
Mm.
soul to make a choice to be without limbs, to be born so odd, it is really brave and
Yeah.
really is giving us the opportunity to expand, to know
Yeah.
ourselves so much better. So you
Yeah.
really brought up a very, very good point, Crystal. Thank you for that.
I'd like to
Yeah.
also highlight the experience of you talked about like love,
Mhm.
but what about for them self-love? Yes, must be
Mm,
like
Yeah.
like nurturing this love. And like we're talking about like for everyone, we're talking about kids or our family members, but what about our own?
You
Me and
brought up
me
a
loving each
very
other.
good point, right? Like
Mm,
without remembering what contract I created, if I was born odd, different, with some diseases, skin diseases, or without any
mm,
limbs and all that, right? Is it difficult to love myself and not judge myself and not
yeah,
criticize myself and say, how God let me be born this way?
yep,
How often we get angry with God for being born not smart enough, not good enough, not rich enough, not beautiful enough. In this case, not normal, not the same as others, right? That is
mm,
really tough too. That is a very difficult lesson, I can
yeah.
imagine.
I mean, it would be hard for this individual if he was going to say, "Oh, I'm born without all these limbs because I must have had a really bad, this is bad karma for me," right? And then it's gonna
Mm.
stop there, right? But if he or she takes away that karma as the reason for this, my current situation, then everything changes.
Mm,
Everything, right? Like what Annie brought up, like, hey, then this person is able to know to be resilient, to learn to love himself or herself, so that they can grow and take that next step, like the baby steps towards their growth, right?
mm.
Yeah.
So here's the interesting thing, right? When will that soul realize that? Because we come blind, veiled, not knowing what contract we have signed, and then we suffer, right? When will that realization be and go, I just wanted this experience?
Mm,
I think it's very hard, and that's exactly what we're talking about, that this is spiritual growth, the expansion of the experience, and then learning truly the light within is the same, no matter how you look like, no matter what environment you're born in, no matter what country you're born in, the light is still within. Yeah.
yeah.
So I think this is going to be our key takeaway, right? That ultimately soul karma, a soul contract, soul purpose, and
Purpose.
karma, dharma is just building on our soul experiences and ultimately learning to love ourselves. I love that, Annie. I'm so glad you brought it up.
Yes.
I'm so glad you brought it up.
Yeah.
So with that, any other questions before we end? Or
I
any key
don't
takeaways?
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I felt like what just to ride on Annie's point about self-love. And, for all of you listening, basically, if whatever you're going through, I think the first step towards your healing journey is self-love, really. Because when you start loving yourself, that is where you're allowing the onions to be peeled. And each layer gets peeled, that is where the healing starts, right? That's where you
Mm,
can move on to the next part of your journey. So,
mm,
yeah,
I love
so
that.
that's
That's a
what I want to
beautiful
say.
closing. Beautiful closing. Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who tuned in today for our episode 6. And looking forward to our next episode. Oh, I didn't tell the channelers what's the next episode about. I will give you a bit of a hint. It is for you to bring to this life about the most challenging cases that you have solved, or maybe not solved,
Not yet solved.
Work
or
in
not yet.
progress.
Work in progress.
Yeah, so that's going to be our next episode, which is going to be the channelists sharing our experiences on the cases that we have worked on, and we're going to bring and share with people the most difficult ones, or the most challenging ones. So next week is the channelers challenge. So that's our episode 7. Okay, with that, thank you everybody for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Good night. Well, good morning or
Bye.
good
Thank
day.
you.
Pause.